How's it going, everyone? Today I'm going to be showing you 5 Sapphire effects that you definitely should be using. This will be a talking video, or I think there's a word for it. It's called commentary. So I will try my best to explain things rather than just briefly go over them and then just finish the video off in 5 minutes. So let's begin with the first, which is Distort Chroma. Now let me just explain why I have this effect on and why I have absolutely no keyframes. So as you can see, this person is very clearly angry. I'd say he represents maybe like wrath, revenge, I think that's the word. His emotions are unstable and it is quite noticeable by all these little like sweat drops. I wanted to kind of enhance I don't really know how to explain, but I wanted to put those emotions on the surface even more so than what's already been done. So as I said, all these like sweat drops, a close-up so you can see it's very like zoomed in onto his face. By adding on Distort Chroma with very low settings, so 0.1 for the amount and 800 for the blur lens, I was able to create some sort of distortion on the right side of his eye. And no, I did not use any masking. I don't know why it's only applied it to that side, but I think that's just how the effect works. But it's no problem at all. It looks fine. Very minimal, but the impact can be seen, and that is what matters when it comes to effects like these. I've also applied it to this second clip over here. So I've set it to -0.1 instead, and although it isn't really noticeable compared to my first one, you can see it around the edges of the sword, and really all I've done is just added a bit of value to my clip. I could improve it even further, so I could turn it down to -0.25, and it looks pretty awesome. You can see that it bends the sword. Now, if I were to set it to a higher or lower value, it will turn out looking weird. Like, you know, I don't really want the face to melt completely. It doesn't look right. So the closer it is to 0, the better it looks. But of course, it depends on your opinion. That's what I prefer. So yeah, Distort Chroma was the first one. Now, the next one is Blur Motion. It's very useful for transition. So let's say something like a scale out, which looks like this if it will play. There you go, something like that. And I'd say that this effect is for people who like that extra bit of detail. So let me just show you without the effect, without any blur motion, without any motion blur at all. So it looks like this, which is pretty good, but depending on your style, you might want motion blur. So this is where blur motion kicks in and it creates a smoother, more noticeable transition between the two. You can see that I've cut the adjustment layer down into 4 frames, and that's simply because Sapphire does not want to work today. It does not, in fact, it never works. The keyframes never work on adjustment layers 90% of the time. And today is one of those days, so I had to cut it down. But let me explain what I've done. So if you're not really familiar with this effect, I'm just going to reset it. This is what it looks like by default. You can control the from Z disc, and I don't really know how to explain it, so I'm just going to call it 0.1 and the 2Z disc 0.2. So if 0.1 was, let's say, 0.5, that's where it will start, and then the second point is basically where it ends. So let's say 1. Think of it as a scale. So imagine like it was set to 150. And then the second one was set to 100. You can sort of visualize the gap between the two values, and between that gap is where we insert all the motion blur. So that was blur motion, one of my favorite effects. But take a look at this next one, which is interesting because I've never actually used it before at all. It's called deband, which is, I believe, the opposite of banding. So banding is kind of like, you know, when you see like a JPEG image and it looks really crusty, especially solid colors like around it. Like if it's got a vignette, it would look really blocky. Debanding kind of reverses that process and it makes it smooth. So if you do have low quality clips, just add this effect on and turn the edge threshold to a higher value until it looks decent according to your liking. However, in this case, I've only set it to 8. So let me just hide this effect. So before, in fact, pay attention to this sky down here. So before and after, do you see the difference? It's smoothened it out and almost, it kind of works like a blur, I would say. So the viewers might be less likely to notice the clouds and their focus might be on the character instead. If you really wanted to, you could turn it up to like, let's say 32. However, this affects the entire clip. So now we've got like a paint effect all across his face, which actually does look pretty nice. But if you want to get rid of it, just create a mask and just place it around wherever you want it. So for me, it's the sky, and I also need to turn up the feather, otherwise it's going to look horrible, just like so. It doesn't have to be too detailed, something like that is fine. So before and after. So really what it's doing is it's debanding your clip or image, and it's also adding a blur at the same time, which is very useful. I've got another example here. So for this one, well, I mean, it's more of a preference. I just realized I'm not using the effect for its purpose because you're meant to use it for debanding. But take a look at this. So this character's got like marks under his eyes, and I wanted to give it some more texture. So what I did was I created a mask around it and increased the amount, and this was the result. Is it quite unnecessary? Well, it depends on how you use it. In my case, yes, it kind of is, because no one really cares about whatever this is. If the effect is not adding a decent amount of value, then just scrap the idea. Not the edit, I have to make that clear, just the effect. Next one is motion detect. I actually haven't used this myself much, but it's very, very easy to use. All I had to do was drag it onto my clip and change the combine to add, which resulted in this effect. If you add it on and make no changes, this is what it looks like. In fact, I think I've got an idea to create like an end transition. So if I just make a cut, maybe like maybe around here, then get rid of the effect for the first half, apply a transition, cut it down to maybe, let's go 6 frames, make sure it's centered. Yeah, something like that. How does that look? Actually, let me do 4 frames instead and just move this out the way because it's annoying. Play it back. And wow, that actually looks pretty cool, I think. And it's frozen. Okay, wait, what's going on? Premiere Pro. Yeah, so it's not bad. I think we could add some glow to it. So if we just, sure, S glow will do, which isn't actually working. Okay, let me try something else. Like, where is it? Sapphire glint, that also works. Or maybe we have to place it on top of the effect. I'm not too sure. Let me just try that. It didn't work. What a waste of time. The final effect, which is Sapphire gradient. This is a life changer. Again, just like the distort effect that I added on previously, this one can express emotions very well, or even personalities. I mean, I wouldn't say that this guy is the brightest. He seems fairly evil. I think he is actually. I have seen this film, but that was like 3 years ago or 4, so I don't actually remember. But basically with this effect, so if I just reset it, get rid of my keyframes as well, it just adds a gradient onto your clip, which you can change as well. So I can set it to something like red for the top and maybe like a blue or purple for the bottom. Then you can use a blending mode. So just here where it says combine, so you can either add it or even screen or difference it. That looks really, I think the word is psychedelic. Not only that, but you can also keyframe your points, so you can move them around however you like. And this actually does remind me of invert a bit, at least with the settings that I've gone for at the moment. So for my example, I set the end color to white, and then when I set it to multiply, it let me hide that color, and so we could only see the top one. I then keyframed the points, so from left to right as he moves. If you are a fan of noise, well, you're in luck because there is a noise option, so you can just crank this up. Let's just go 104. Now you've got a bit of texture, which makes your clip look less boring. I pretty much did the same thing for my second clip as well, but with a different color, and I keyframed it just coming down like so. If your clips look boring, add this effect, it changes everything. And with that being said, members, thank you for your support. If you would like this project file, then just check the shop, completely free to you as always. Thank you for watching. Peace.